what you don't understand. The truth is not in your command. Don't shout about what you think is fake. The decision isn't yours to make. Don't lie about the way things are. The tall tales will take you very far. Don't scoff when they say it's the end. In this life, you know you can't pretend. The days pass by.
I muted myself. Hey, everyone. Happy Friday. It is 6 p.m. on Friday, the 20th. We have another really good show for you today. What I want to do is bring on Ellen and Matt. And you heard, if you listened to our show the other day on WBAI, you listened to my show. We had them as guests, and as both working for the city, it was really kind of special because they can give a perspective about the issue that we've been talking about regarding all those that are in the NYC EPPO plan and the Municipal Labor Committee's debate as to should they give their private welfare fund drug data of their members and their dependents, that data to United Healthcare and Emblem. So I want to continue to have this conversation because if you saw my Substack this week, you saw that we're not seeing with our legal team a path to sue to stop this. However, just because it is legal doesn't violate HIPAA, does it really mean you should? And today we're going to get into some of those fiduciary responsibilities of the welfare fund managers that run those union plans, as well as what quite honestly, the city should have taken a look at before agreeing to do this. So I want to start that. If you guys have questions regarding this, I'm going to just ask you to we'll keep an eye on that. But as you start to ask questions about other stuff, like Carol, you've been trying to get in touch with me about the Albany trip, email the organization about that. And then Bob or I will email you from there. And our email, I'll put it back up floating around somewhere down here at the bottom. I forgot to click that. So you have it. But you can email us at retirees@nycretirees.org. And here, I'll put it back up at the bottom so you can see that. That's our website. Just go there. You can email us at the organization. So bring our guests back today. Welcome, Matt and Ellen. Thanks for joining us again to discuss this issue, because I know the three of us have been really passionate about this. And if you guys just want to take a quick second and introduce yourselves, this time tell everyone like we did, like when I introduced you the other day, where you worked, what you did, and then pass the torch. So Ellen, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I worked originally as an agency attorney at the New York City Department of Design and Construction, actually in the ACO office, and also as an attorney in the commissioner's office. Then I moved to the New York City Department of Sanitation's recycling program, where I worked on contracts. And then I moved to the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, where I worked on contracts, data use agreements, and bankruptcies. And in terms of data use agreements, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene probably does the most of them in the city among all the city agencies, because we were in charge of the citywide immunization registry. And we also regularly shared data with outside entities, such as the New York State Public Health Lab, where we exchanged data on COVID varieties circulating and other diseases, and also with things like the New Jersey Poison Control and other universities. So I'm very well familiar with data use agreements and the role of the Chief Privacy Officer for the city, which we will talk about in a bit.
Cool. Okay, Matt.
Okay, good evening. My name is Matt Weber. I had an opportunity when I was working with New York City to work in a variety of roles. I actually started very early on in my career as a part-time instructor in EMS, teaching EMTs. And from there, I moved into an ER emergency room administrative position. Started off on midnight to 8s, and boy, that was an awakening for me. From there, I progressed into a variety of different roles within the, back in the days, we called it data processing. At some point, my family, we decided that we would move out of New York. We live in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, I've had a variety of different director roles, director of administrative and financial systems, director of, I was an information security officer, director of information protection and compliance, director of business resiliency and continuity planning. And so I've really had a great number of opportunities. In that period of time, we've had opportunities to work on protecting information proactively, responding to situations where people think that there may have been an issue, responding to regulatory issues, and working with third-party organizations such as what we call business associate agreements. So looking forward to this conversation tonight, and looking forward to sharing as much information as we can.
That's great. Thank you guys for being with us. So as a quick recap, what we want to do is let everyone know that we've looked through some of these issues. Let's talk about these issues for those that are listening to us for the first time. I just want to quickly update you or repeat what we talked about on Monday. So the Municipal Labor Committee passed the NYC EPPO plan, which those who are active workers and pre-Medicare retirees are in. As part of the savings agreement, because the Municipal Labor Committee agreed that that plan would save the city $1 billion. In that contract, and if you remember the controversy over the contract, was that the unions in the MLC, not all of them had a time to read that contract. They were given 1 day to view it at DC 37 headquarters from like 10 to 3. They could bring one guest. They couldn't take pictures, and they couldn't take a copy of that contract back to their union with them, which meant their board didn't see it. Their members didn't see it. They didn't have the ability to have an open discussion about that contract with their members. Now, what they did see when they went to see this contract, if they did, and not many of them did, was that there were 40 pages, they assumed, 40 pages of redacted text. And when I say redacted text, they're looking worse than the Epstein emails that you see on the news. So you weren't seeing the financial data. You didn't see anything that would show you what would happen if this plan didn't save $1 billion. You didn't see anything about what the triggers were in cost. You didn't see anything about prior authorization, co-pays, nothing like that. And all of those financial details in the plan should have been realized publicly to all of the unions that were voting on it. But they weren't. What it ended up finding out when we finally got the contract through the FOIL process after the contract was in place was that there was not 40 pages or 30 pages. It was actually close to 100 pages of redacted text. Now, what would that show? All of the financial information. It would have showed everything that I had just mentioned to you about the savings agreement, what bad things would happen if those benchmarks weren't met. One of those things was that in the process of saving $1 billion, that the unions could be credited with $100 million in savings if the welfare funds agreed to give their drug data completely unredacted of their welfare fund drug plan to United Healthcare and Emblem. What does that look like? That's a good question. Well, the MLC had a meeting this past week. Actually, I think was it maybe the 9th or the 13th? And what did they say? They said that the plan would save $1 billion. That's their goal, and $100 million credited if the welfare funds agreed to give pure unredacted data from their members and their members' dependents. So if you have a family plan and you have kids and a spouse on that plan, all of that data, name, birthday, gender, any socioeconomic details, your medications, your dosages, the histories of those, and all the medical data attached to that drug prescription, where you got it, when you got it, how often you get it. And they want the drug data on a weekly basis. And what do they want to do? Well, it was announced at the MLC meeting that they want to align the drug data with the medical data for those in the NYC EPPO plan, and then they want to put it all in a unique AI database that will take all of this information, and they want to give you each a score. So like me, if the three of us were in NYC EPPO, which I don't believe we are, each one of us would have had an individual score based on our risk from low, medium to high, given a number between 0 and 100. And what would they use it for? It's called risk stratification. That'll be your homework to look up these new words. Risk stratification, which will identify what type of a risk you are to Emblem United. And then they want to use it for predictive modeling. You could also Google that word. And when you do all that, stick in the other words, United Healthcare, afterwards, and just make sure like you're not drinking anything, because you'll probably scream. And then that will predict, it'll not only identify what the current cost of you as a patient to the insurance company is, but it will also predict the future costs of you to them. And what do they want to use this for? They want to call you and say, hi, I'm United Healthcare, your insurance company, and we see you're taking XY drug, and we see that you're being treated for ABC diagnoses, and we think you could have a potential better outcome if you used an alternative care. And they want to mitigate that because they're doing it for care management. That's another word. And they also want to use it for cost containment. And so those are all like buzzwords and red flags for me, because I start thinking prior authorization, denial of care. They're going to start to tamp down your usage. What are the financial triggers? Some of the unions raised concerns about the data being used with some bias, whether it's gender or ethnic or whatever. And those were the concerns that were brought. So this was the conversation. If you didn't hear the radio show, please go to my Substack, and put in my name. Or go to my Facebook page. We literally posted that show. It was great. I kind of had a conspiracy theory thought, because for a little while, the radio station lost my audio, and like took them a whole day to find it. I was like, how did you lose my show? But they did find it in Texas, and we did finally get it back. So thank you to WBAI engineers for doing that. We will be recording our own show now every Monday, just in case that happens again. But at least you do have it. But today, now that you have that recap, I want to have a conversation with Matthew and Ellen over that, because their expertise as city employees, their jobs kind of touch this issue. And if you read my Substack this week, just the other day that I put it out, I think it was yesterday, all my days blur together, my apologies. But we actually spoke to our legal team about it. And while this may not be illegal, the question does be, is it moral or ethical? And does it taint the trust that you had in your welfare funds? Because their argument is it doesn't violate HIPAA, because they're able to peg this into how they're going to use it for health insurance reasons. But should they? And I think that's the larger question as a fiduciary responsibility of a welfare fund. So that's where we're going to start to come in on this conversation, right?
Yes.
Who wants to start?
Well, I'd like to represent a fictitious insurance company. And Mary Ann, if you could put that at the bottom somehow and say, this is fictitious. This is not representing any specific
Hold on.
company.
Let's do that. Hold on. Let me change this to, let's change the bottom and say,
This is role-playing, fictitious.
We are role-playing to make a point.
Yeah, Matt is the insurance carrier, and I'm going to be the patient.
And I'm really excited to be here tonight. All right.
Okay.
Are we ready? All right. So,
all right, that's the insurance company. He's going to play the role of the insurance company, and Ellen is going to play the role of the patient advocate, right?
Well, the consumer of the insurance.
Okay, so go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, good evening, folks. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, Ellen and your colleagues, thank you for inviting me tonight. I just want to share some quick points about how important this endeavor is that we're embarking on. We're representing the ABC Insurance Company, and as you know, there's a plan. We've asked your agencies to share unique information from your pharmaceuticals. That's when you a physician or provider requests your pharmaceuticals, it's dispensed to you, and then we're asking that information be shared with us. Let me highlight the benefits of this. We all know what it's like when we go into a caregiver. They're pressed for time and they're not always in a position to give you all the answers that you need. But by our taking all the information that we have about you from claims data, from processing payments, and from hopefully getting this information on pharmaceutical data, we're able to aggregate that all together. We're able to run it through some really powerful technology. And through that technology, which is embraced or umbrellaed by our human beings, so we don't want to for a second suggest that it's only artificial intelligence. What we want to tell you is that there's certainly a human component of well-trained, well-educated professionals who are looking out for that information. So essentially what we're looking to do is make sure that we use that information in a positive way. We want to enhance your healthcare. We want to make sure that those individuals who have serious illnesses are receiving the absolute best care that they can receive in a timely fashion from high quality providers. We want to assure you that we have very strong controls in place, administrative controls such as policies and procedures. We have physical controls so that people literally can't get into the areas where the data are. And we have technical controls, things like you've heard in the past, like encryption. So we want to put you at ease and make sure you understand that the intent is to use this data for good purposes. We're only going to access the minimum necessary amount of data in order to perform our jobs under the scope of the contract that we have with your employer. All right, I'm going to give Ellen a chance. I know that she's anxious to speak as well.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go about it from a consumer of insurance. This is going to be from sort of like a credit rating approach. I have a credit rating, and I try not to overuse my credit cards, and I can look up in my bank account, and they use a credit rating service, and I can see ways I can improve my credit rating. But what you're suggesting, Matt, the carrier, wouldn't give me any way to benefit from anything. In fact, it would hurt me because I don't know what I could do to make it better so that my risk stratification would change from one level to another. I can't change my health conditions. Some of them are long-term, and some of them do have, I'll get worse. So that's an issue too. The data is not going to be used to benefit me in any way. In fact, the data exchange could be used to hurt me. Under both federal law and New York state law, information related to HIV drugs and mental health drugs, substance abuse treatment drugs, and also now birth control at the federal level are all protected. And given that United Healthcare and Anthem and other of the large carriers have had massive breaches of data over the past several years, I don't feel very comfortable about this. In addition, I don't know what century your carrier leaders are working on, but already in New York, years ago, all of the scripts are electronically done. Our doctor knows exactly what drugs are being prescribed by everyone else, and so does the pharmacy. So there's not an issue where someone would have to call me and say, "Hi, I'm from the carrier and I want to talk about your drugs to help you." Finally, and this is, I think, the most important thing, the welfare funds for the individual unions in the city were set up to be individual and not a centralized welfare fund, so they could help members like me who are in a union and tweak all of the benefits for drugs and other things to help them. So, for example, if I'm a uniformed member, in the past, I know the uniform welfare funds have not wanted to release drug data. Why? Because they want patients to get better and not be afraid of losing their jobs or being discriminated against by their employer, the city. So if you have a cop that has anxiety or depression, wouldn't you want them to be not afraid of getting the drugs through their welfare fund benefits that just stays with their welfare fund? So I have a real problem with that, because I think that it does violate the whole spirit of setting up these welfare funds, many of whom are very old, decades, back when there wasn't even drug insurance, and they're there to help members. So I find it hard to understand why what is being proposed by the non-uniformed unions that they're doing with sharing the drug data of their members, their actives, and their non-Medicare retirees with United, which has about the worst record in this.
Well, let me put you at ease, Ellen. First of all, I know you raised several very valid concerns, and I want to try my best to address each one of them.
20 seconds.
Our ABC insurance company, fictitious, by the way, we take your right to privacy very, very seriously, and that of all of our members. In fact, our unit within the ABC company has never had a breach. And I know by saying those words, I might jinx myself, but we've never had a breach in our entire 50-year history in our unit within the ABC company. As far as the risk scores go, you're absolutely right. When you look at financial information, you can look at what's called a credit score or FICO score, and that's predicated upon a variety of input information, such as how well you pay your bills, do you pay your bills on time, do you have too much credit. When we're talking about creating a risk score on behalf of our patients, what we're really talking about is a score that helps identify those individuals who are at most risk for catastrophic outcomes. We want to make sure that we can provide every possible resource to any patient such that they can have a great life, a high quality of life, quality of living, and affordable care. We all know that if we ignore things like diabetes, or if we ignore things like high cholesterol, we know that the outcome builds over time. People could have preventable diabetes if we catch it in time. So by requesting this unique, specific information from New York's various unions and having that information aggregated with the other information that we keep very well protected, we believe that that's actually going to provide you with very enhanced services at no additional cost for you. Now, I do want to address an issue. I know that there's some discussion out there about us buying this information and making a payment to your organization. Through the initial set of contracts that we've been involved with the organization, they set some quality measures, some criteria for us that if we were to achieve specific measurable outcomes for the patient population, that there would be some additional funds transferred between the organizations. One of the ways for us to accomplish that is we need additional data. It's hard for us to make the best decisions and involve the patient without all the appropriate data. So that would be the explanation for why we need the data. And absolutely, if we can achieve better outcomes for the patient and we can achieve better outcomes for your employer, your unions, then we want to reward them with a payment.
So the Affordable Care Act eliminated discrimination on the basis of underlying conditions and made it so that carriers could not charge people who had diabetes or other conditions more. Unfortunately, there have been many people trying to chip away at this through both the Medicare Advantage system and others. And I look at this as a backdoor way of trying to eliminate these very important protections. Let's also remember that women were discriminated against in healthcare for years and everything else. I still remember that New York City Council had to pass a law saying that if you brought a shirt to a dry cleaner's and it was a men's shirt and you wanted to have it washed and folded and everything and starched, it cost less than if you brought a women's blouse, even though we're usually smaller, but they got away with it. So I don't want to see now this is a backdoor way to discriminate, because this is going to be a self-insured insurance plan. It is going to lack many of the state and federal protections to the people using this health insurance plan. The NYC CEPPO. And that disturbs me greatly because it is like a black box. It's not going to have, I think, protections against surprise billing and everything else. So they can get the data and there will be less constraints upon what they can do. And as a woman, as someone in a group who's been discriminated against, as someone who has long-term health issues, including beginning as a child, where when I became an adult, I actually worried before the Affordable Care Act that I could not even get insurance. This concerns me deeply. Thank you, Mr. Carrier.
Okay, I'd like to just wrap up by just sharing a couple of points, and then you certainly you have an opportunity to wrap up as well. Okay, when I look at this, I absolutely hear your concerns, and let me assure you, we take allegations of discrimination extremely seriously. There is no way that we would tolerate anyone using protected health information or super protected health information. Super protected health information, as you spoke to, it deals with mental health issues. It deals with family planning, HIV, etc. We take those issues very seriously. Every member of our staff is required to go through initial HIPAA training, privacy training, and ongoing annual training. We do everything we can to make sure that people understand that this data, if it were to be shared beyond the intended boundaries, would have immeasurable, catastrophic consequences. So I want to assure you again, as we take every possible measure to protect people's sensitive information. Now, when we talk about the overall benefit, again, I want to come back to the fact that if we're able to take unique data from individuals to include pharmaceutical data, prescriptions that are dispensed to individuals, we can check for things like contraindications, that someone's not taking a medication that perhaps is going to cause a conflict with a different medication that they've already been prescribed. Equally as important, we can look for things where patients are prescribed a really critical prescription, and then for whatever reason, the patient chooses not to continue to take it. We want to make sure that we surface those issues so that you can have a conversation with your provider, because we understand there are some times when people take medications and the medication causes discomfort or a problem, and people might choose to discontinue it without engaging their medical provider. So overall, we believe that this is going to raise the quality of care. It's going to raise the quality of one's overall lifetime and wellness. And that's why we think that this is a really good move. So thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Marianne, for this opportunity.
So you guys are a hoot because Matt, everyone thinks you were like a shoe-in for the insurance company. Katie says, Matt, you could easily stand in for Michael Moger at the next DA. And I swear, sweetheart, I think you were probably like somehow in that woman's head that was talking in the MLC meeting the other day, because that's exactly the crap that they said. Now, I want to share something with you guys. And Katie's also taking umbrage that you're using ABC. So we're going to say DEF Insurance Company, because that's the name of one of their groups. So United Healthcare had one of the largest breaches in history with the Change group.
Yeah, no joke. Terrible.
That affected 193 million people. And this was just this past summer. So I wanted to expose this to you. And then of course I get off that call the other day and I go outside, bring out my garbage and go get my mail. And I get a letter from MCA Sedgwick from the 9/11 program that there was a breach in the World Trade Center program. Now that is huge because we keep saying that this can happen, right? And we're watching this and my friends are watching this, they're texting me, thank you, Paul, I love you if you're watching. He's sending me, links of all of this in other places. So this is one of the most critical things is I think there are so many data breaches so many times that now it's just commonplace that people don't get as angry about it as they used to. And those are things that you've just been, I don't know, it's like conditioned to not get upset because it happens just so often. And I think that's a problem. We're not taking this seriously, that our data should be that private. And then again, just because You just because it doesn't violate a federal law and there's no city or state law to prevent it doesn't mean that you should. So in moving this conversation into the next part, let's move into the fiduciary conversation that you guys were having with me before. Ellen, did you want to start with that?
Yeah, certain types of organizations that serve others, like for welfare purposes, and are private organizations, the officers have a fiduciary duty to make sure that they are managing the assets of the organization, among other things, appropriately, and that what they are doing in terms of providing any services actually meet the needs of the members. And a good case can be made, I think, that some of these welfare funds that are just saying, yeah, we'll give you the data, are actually violating the fundamental purposes for which they were founded, which was to, in the case of the city's welfare funds, to provide drug plans for many of the people in unions. Not all of the unions have them, but other things like vision and dental. Some of them have educational benefits. So this was actually a pretty bold thing to be doing. And the unions were at the forefront of this, in particular in New York City. So there's well-established fiduciary law on things that you can and cannot do as an officer and director. And in fact, these organizations have to have insurance policies for directors and officers in case they intentionally violate the terms and conditions of bylaws of the organization. So we don't probably have access to the bylaws and the regulations of each of these welfare funds. Some of them we may have because the members gave them to us, but I would be interested as an attorney to take a look at some of these if you ever care to, if you ever have access to them, Marianne, and you want to share them with me. Okay. I would be happy to review some of them, because I do think that if you're a member of a union that has a drug plan, and this union has said already that they're going to provide your data, I think you should be asking questions of your welfare fund. And I would say bring it on, because I do think this violates the fundamental reason for having these organizations exist. And also, well, you could say, well, why don't we have all the welfare funds joined together, which has been mentioned for cost saving? And that might work for the non-uniformed unions, welfare funds. But I think for the uniformed welfare funds, it's very important that they be able to control who has access to their employees and their retirees' data for the reasons I mentioned, because you want people to get treatment. You don't want them to feel that they can't afford treatment because they can't use their insurance because they're afraid the data will be reported. And in the case of reproductive health, for goodness sakes, you don't want any female dependent of a city retiree, a city non-dependent care retiree, or an active to worry that if they're using birth control and they're going to college in the state of Texas, they could be arrested because someone got the data that they're using it. And that actually could conceivably happen in Texas.
Well, and Ellen, you're making some great points. And I would add is that the responsibility of an organization, a covered entity is the organization that's collecting health information, that they're responsible for information that was created in the past. So if you created medical records from 10 years ago, they're responsible for maintaining the sanctity and the confidentiality of that. They're responsible for the current information, meaning today's information, and they're responsible for the future information. So if you were to, I'll use a scenario here, is that if a dependent of a New York City retiree or an employee were prescribed a medication, and if that particular medication were to somehow be breached, that the person was taking it a few years later and they're applying for maybe a very particular government type job, that might be cause of saying you're not going to get the job. If we think about it, in the past, when people would go in, they would discriminate against based upon physical disabilities. Someone would show up and they would maybe be blind, or they'd have a impairment where they could not navigate and they needed assistance in navigating, there was discrimination there. Over time, what we've come to realize is discrimination takes on a lot of different aspects to it. And one aspect in contemporary times has to do with one's health. It affects the ability to acquire insurance, health insurance. It affects the ability to get life insurance. It affects the ability, whether we want to admit it or not, for some people to be able to get a job and retain a job. Well, it may be illegal to penalize or to deny someone a job or health insurance, et cetera. I think we're all reasonable adults and we understand, we know that that happens in society. So I do think when I reflect upon this, as a healthcare professional, there are times where I choose to participate in what's called human subject research. That's where you might go into an academic medical center and they might have a program going. You say, "Oh, I'm interested in doing that, a hair loss study, and I'll take the $25 gift card you're going to offer me." And for that, you get the privilege of smearing some stuff on your head, and they get to measure whether or not your hair grows from week to week. And I use that as an example because at one time I tried participating in that study, and you can tell how well it worked. But the point is, when I was prepared to enter into that study, they provided me with a tremendous amount of information as to who would have access to information, how would the information be used, what are my rights, would the information be de-identified? And I know we've had a lot of conversations with you, Owen, about the ability to de-identify information. And in the past, we've said that depending upon what the information is and where someone lives, you may be able to re-identify it easily. So I do think that there are times in life where people choose to participate. They choose to share the information. And what we've really not been talking about this evening is whether or not there's an opportunity for people to elect to have their pharmacy data shared with the insurance company, because some people might be comfortable with the pros that come with that. And I did see the comments. A lot of people think I would make a great used car salesman, sell the Brooklyn Bridge, a few other comments. But there may be some people who are inclined to allow their prescription data to be shared with the health insurance company. Maybe it's someone who's advancing in age and they forget to fill their prescriptions, and it can have some consequential impact, and they don't have family members who are looking after them. You might be able to make a case that for some individuals, what I'd like is the ability to reserve my participation. I'd like the ability so that I could say, yes, you may share my information. Here's my expectations around it. You can share it for the next 12 months. Let me see if I get a benefit out of it. And at the 12-month period, I want the ability to either renew or put an end to it. But Marianne, could you help us refresh our memory? Is there any opportunity for union or management benefit or active employees to participate in the decision about sharing their information?
So the unions with their own welfare fund plan, they're the only ones that have the ability to say whether or not they will or will not give their drug data to United Healthcare and Emblem. If you are the MBF, in MBF, Managerial Benefit Fund, or in the city drug rider. Now, who does that include? That is all of your managerial titles, non-union. That is all your mayors, your council members, some of the attorneys that are not in some of the unions. Those are all staffers, deputy mayors, deputy commissioners, all of those people. Also, it is unions who don't have a drug plan. So that would be like your correction captains, that would be like your teachers. And there's a whole bunch of small little unions that don't have a drug plan whose members have to buy the city drug rider. Though this group of people, you had no say. You were never even informed. And even if you were in a plan, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong. You are OSA and you
I'm
do.
OSA. And we have no drug plan.
And you have no drug plan, which means you're on the city drug rider. So OSA wouldn't even have had an opportunity to say, I don't want my members' drug data to be shared. And how did that come about? We learned about that from leaders that were attending the MLC meeting when one of the unions had said, what about us? What happens with our members who are in the city drug rider? Because we don't offer them a drug plan. What do we do? When do we get to tell you that we do or don't? And the Municipal Labor Committee leadership said, you don't have a say. Your members are in the city drug rider. The city already gave that data over to United Healthcare and Emblem. And the United Healthcare lady said, oh yeah, we have data for over 8,200 people already that we're already processing and making calls for. And what did that mean? Well, just someone here in the chat a second ago said that Emblem calls all the time to discuss medications, and my response is, I have doctors I trust, and hang up. Like, Sharon, this reminds me, if I tell you, this reminds me of Medicare Advantage, right? How many times, and Lloyd is on here from Transit, he can tell you the same thing. This reminds me of the healthy home visit. We're Aetna, and we're coming to your house to talk to you about your healthcare, and we're going to upcode you for risk stratification and predictive modeling. I'm sure Matt could probably do that in his insurance man voice a lot better than I can, but that was the point, is that this is creepy, and that's, this is some of the conversations we wanted to bring out, because those people never had a say. Ellen never had a say. Matt never had a say. And your question is, do you have a chance to opt out? What the union leaders were told is that you could opt out. Like if Emblem calls you or United calls you, you could say, I want to opt out of this program that you have. I don't want anything to do with it. Well, from what we're being told, and this does require clarification if any union leaders are listening, is you're opting out of the program to call you, but they're still getting your data. There's no way for you to opt out of the data. You're just opting out of the program of them calling you, hi, we're the insurance company, and we want to talk to you about your health care.
So it makes me think that next week I'm going to call up Emblem and ask if I could get an county of disclosures. So that's a technical kind of activity that HIPAA allows for.
Right.
And I'm going to ask whether or not I can get an county of disclosures of who's had access to information and how it's been used. I don't know if they'll grant my request, but it's worthy of asking. And if I'm successful,
that I would ask also because it was unclear as to whether or not those of us that do not have union drug plans or are in the Managerial Employees Association, as to whether or not United and UMR were getting access somehow to our drug data. Personally, from their behavior in terms of bargaining on this in the book of business, I have to believe that they are, because for a long time they were telling Marianne, as I understand it, that none of the pre-Medicare or Medicare retirees would be in the drug plan, the city's drug plan, but then that changed. And I think it has everything to do with the book of business and the behaviors that I've observed, not just from United, but from other carriers over the years, as someone who actually likes insurance and is interested in it. Although it used to make everyone's eyes glaze over at my agency, I actually find it an interesting subject matter. And I'm glad that actually Matt and I found each other through you, because we share a lot of similar interests and concerns.
I wonder if, I'm not a conspiracy person, but I wonder, is this, when they start to suggest these types of activities or engage in these types of activities without inviting participation from the people who it most impacts, I wonder, like, if they're forgetting to bring to their table their chief privacy officer, their information security officer, I wonder if they're forgetting to bring the people to the table who actually, as professionals, have this duty and responsibility to stand up for each of us, for the Ellens, the Matts, the Mary Anns, et cetera. And is that something, Mary Ann, do you have any way to be able to get a list of who they're inviting to the table when they're having these contract conversations, contractual type of conversations?
So that was another very interesting thing, another interesting question that you're asking about this specific issue. So how was it that even the people who saw the contract, went to go see it, weren't able to see where this $100 million savings potentially from voluntarily agreeing to give your welfare fund data terminology was in the contract? And so I'm going to frame it this way. There's 101 unions in the Municipal Labor Committee. In the last meeting, we were told there was one union that supported it vocally and even brought their welfare fund lawyer to support that position. One. It was unusual. No one brings welfare fund lawyers to the MLC meetings. I mean, I've been listening to these for years. I've never, or used to go to these meetings for never heard that before. One union supported it. The other unions were extremely hesitant. And I will tell you, everyone replied back to us and said to us, listen, you've got us thinking about all of these changes to our healthcare now for like the last 5 years. And this was probably in their eyes one of the best meetings that they'd had in a long time because of the critical thinking and the critical questions. What we were told was that they were asking questions about AI usage, about the bias that could potentially be put in that AI, how it would be used, who would own that data, what would happen to it at the end of the contract or the end of the agreement. And the way that was framed was that the last plan lasted 46 years. So what are you worried about? When it's over, they'll just delete it. But then the next question, smart person that we were told said, well, AI is like a brain. It's like the database learns. And so even though you take the data out or you give it back to us, it's raw data. By that point, it's already built and been built upon and learned and whatever. This main brain, what happens to the main brain that you just created? Do you take that AI brain after you've taken all the data out of it and put that into another big, massive United Healthcare AI brain? I have no idea. They couldn't answer that question. They said that there was over 700 data points that they would extrapolate from the data of the drug plan alone, 700 data points, and they couldn't tell you what it was. They also said that there was a committee that was a nationally recognized committee that would oversee these things, but they didn't get into the details of who the committee was. So I'm going to tell you, in the Municipal Labor Committee negotiating world, healthcare, first of all, healthcare for every union member, every union is a mandatory subject of bargaining. Every active union member, healthcare is a mandatory subject of bargaining. And I still take the position that the members and the boards and the officers of those unions were deprived of that because their one union leader was told, here, we're doing a vote. And they didn't vote on this yet, to my knowledge. But of this agreement, there's very few people. Why? Because the Municipal Labor Committee makes these little tiny committees. You have these secretive technical committees. You have this secretive health, labor management, tripartite committees, health policy committees. You never know who's on them. You never see agendas. You never see minutes. This committee, who was on it? I can't tell you, but I will tell you that the 5 people in the room that are on the executive board, which was UFT, DC 37, Local 237 Teamsters, CWA 1180, and at the time this was negotiated, Harry Nespoli was still there from sanitation. Those 5 unions agreed to do this from the onset. And they must have had, those 5 unions must have had some critical knowledge of what that agreement looked like, because they knew about it when they took the vote on this plan. And the others were just, all they knew was what they were told by the leadership before the vote of the NYC EPPO. So there wasn't, they couldn't even say when someone said, we were told that someone said to them, where is this in the contract? And while they were cited a provision, no one came back to me when I said, well, where is that? Because I have the contract. That's public.
Well, what I think is really weird is that the chief privacy officer is supposed to get involved in this type of a large data use agreement that would be part of the insurance contract and would involve numerous outside entities, in this case, the welfare funds. And there's an idea in government of mandamus, which is basically if a government official is supposed to engage in an act where they're supposed to review something, but they willfully or fail to do so, you can actually bring an action against them. And so my question would be about the chief privacy officer as to whether she ever got a chance to review this contract and the data use agreement and any business associate agreements that were part of it, such as MMR, United UMR. And if she didn't, then you could make a good argument that this is, and you probably could bring an Article 78 proceeding saying that she should have at least considered it and memorialized it in a memorandum of law to OLR and to MLC and the welfare funds.
I would add to that and say that the role of the chief privacy officer, which is obviously to protect people's confidential information, is augmented or complemented by information security officers. So the information security officer is the technical component generally that complements the administrative component of a privacy officer. It doesn't mean that a privacy officer is not familiar with good technical controls, and it doesn't mean that a security officer, information security officer, is not familiar with the administrative controls. But what concerns me here is that if someone is not in the room representing the role of the chief privacy officer and the information security officer, and if we're depending upon other individuals who may be very knowledgeable, well-educated, lots of degrees, but their specialty is not privacy and security, then that's a huge gap. And it's kind of like saying you're in the operating room and you don't have an anesthesiologist, and you don't have the nursing personnel and the sterile people and the people counting how many dressings they're putting in and out of your body. Those are really important. So you could talk all day long that you saw your PCP and PCP is wonderful. But in the next room, when you're talking about something else like surgery, you've got to have the right mix of people in the room. And my concern is that the MLC may be absolute experts at certain parts of negotiating contracts, but when it comes to things as sensitive as people's health information, that's the opportunity for them to bring in world-renowned experts in privacy and information security. And there is another element, and Ellen said it earlier, we should not lose sight of it. Super protected health information. That information is generally thought of as information that can have immeasurable, permanent consequences, negative consequences for an individual if it were wrongfully accessed, used, shared, transmitted, etc. So I think that role within the MLC, a fair question to ask the MLC is that when they were looking into and weighing this decision of whether they will or won't share the pharmacy data, was there an expert in the room who's familiar with New York State's super protected laws and regulations? And I'm going to expand that a little more, is that many states, if not all 50 states, attorney general's offices have also defined their version of super protected health information. And they may not be the same exact definitions. So to the extent that we have retirees living across the country and even out of the country, but there are some states like California that are known for having some of the strictest privacy regulations. I'm wondering if anyone in that room in the MLC stood up and said that they are representing the interests of the following parties. They represent the interests of people's super protected information, and they're representing the interests of people who are scattered around the United States and their rights to privacy.
So what I want to say to that is there were a few people that contacted us and told us that there was concern like that, and some of that was expressed. However, the lawyer for the MLC, the UFT, DC 37, 237, CWA 1180, and a whole bunch of others, you know that guy, Alan Klinger, he told everyone that there was only HIPAA that this, would have crossed, and it doesn't cross HIPAA. They gave them documents that many people shared with us, and they said that there would have been a state law. However, the governor vetoed it in December, and that bill that was done by Senator Liz Krueger. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people probably going, is that bill coming back? Which I hope it does, because it would absolutely put the control back in your hands. So I no doubt expect the unions will probably try to fight that. But there were a lot of unions that didn't like this. Now, back to the issue of fiduciary. And this is really important. So what is a fiduciary? So people who don't know what that means. A fiduciary in a public union welfare fund is an individual or entity such as a trustee, a fund administrator, or an investment manager who has the discretionary authority or control over the management, assets, and administration of the fund. They are legally and ethically obligated to act solely in the interest of the participants and beneficiaries, public employees, to provide benefits and pay reasonable expenses. While public sector plans are generally exempt from federal ERISA, that's their Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, the trustees of these funds are still bound by the high standards of loyalty and care, often similar to the ERISA principles. The core fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciaries in public welfare funds must adhere to the following duties. The duty of loyalty. Duty of loyalty is an act for exclusive purpose of providing benefits to participants and their beneficiaries. They must put the interests of the members above their own, the union's or the employer's interest. Do I need to repeat that a second time? The duty of prudence, which is care. Act with care, skill, and diligence that a prudent person familiar with such matters would use. This includes making informed, rational decisions regarding investments of funds and the management of those benefits. Compliance and plan documents. Follow the governing plan documents where applicable, state or local laws, which we know here there really aren't any. Avoid conflicts of interest. Refrain from engaging in transactions that benefit parties related to the plan, such as service providers or the union itself. Diversification. Diversify investments to minimize the risk of large losses unless it is clearly prudent not to be able to do so. Who is the beneficiary? Beneficiary status is based on the function performed, not just a title. Key individuals usually include fund trustees, which are individuals responsible for overseeing the trust fund. Plan administrators. These are exercising discretion over claims and eligibility, and the investment managers. That's common sense. Consequences of breach. Fiduciaries who fail to meet these standards may be personally liable to restore any losses to the fund or restore any profits made through improper use of those assets. Now, that is a lot to consider. I know I saw Ellen goes, oh my God. But you guys, that was one of your first concerns, was it may not have been so much legal, but it would have been in a fiduciary capacity, which is what I wrote about the other day.
Absolutely. And this body of law is actually very ancient and is well established, including in New York State because of the age of New York State and being the one of the early centers of union activity and creation of welfare funds. So there's not much question about what fiduciary duty is for these types of organizations. And again, I do think that perhaps it's the time for the beneficiaries of some of these welfare funds who get their drug plan, their dental, their vision, their tuition benefits or whatever from the welfare funds to perhaps have private conversations with officials at their welfare funds, email them about their concerns, talk with them about their concerns, because I do think as an attorney, they're valid concerns. You can make a colorable argument in court that the decisions of some of these welfare funds are actually not what would be a prudent decision on the part of the decision makers of the welfare funds to help the beneficiaries of the funds. In fact, you could assert, I think it would be, again, a colorable claim, which means that a judge wouldn't throw it out. They'd actually hear it, and you could get a TRO on that basis, that there are issues with this, serious issues.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I don't think that there's any dollar amount that you can put in terms of what is the value of this cohort's data. So I use the word cohort to mean retirees, active employees, pre-65. So I'm curious as to how did someone arrive at 100,000? Was it 100,000, $100 million? Yeah. How did they arrive at a number? Like, who was it that calculated and said, taking this information, which most people would believe would be precious information, how did they arriving at a monetary value for our data?
So great question. That came from the insurance company, of course. And I had shared a couple of articles this week. I think actually Ellen shared one with us that came out of AI and valuation of data. But one of the issues is that it was the insurance company that put the $100 million value on it. And what it was said was that if 75% of the people in the NYCE PPO plan, and they were alleged to have had 20% already from those on the City Drug Rider and an MBF, if the insurance company, United Healthcare and Emblem, had 75% of the members in the plan, that would be worth approximately $100 million. There was some question about the valuation. Is that too low? Because they want it so bad that they're pushing to do this right now. We're 6 weeks into the new plan. They want it now. My feeling on that is they probably already know by the metrics of utilization, who's going to the doctor, how often people are going, how many people are going. Because you have to remember, you have a group of people that live outside the New York State area, outside the downstate 13, that didn't have access to doctors and hospitals readily. And now it's probably like, yes, I can go to the doctor. I can go to physical therapy. I don't have to travel an hour to find a doctor. And they're probably all going to the doctor. And now they're seeing utilization start to tick up like they didn't before. Maybe they would just suck up an injury, but now they're going to urgent care. They're using their healthcare from all this time. They had been restricted from doing so or be forced to pay huge out-of-pocket costs. So I think that for them to start this right now out the gate, they must be seeing numbers that they're not really happy with. The $100 million is a question because one of the unions called me and said, well, a question was raised in the room about value. Who determines this? They determined it, they being the insurance company, when they did this negotiation of this contract. So that meant that Alan Klinger sat at a table with the insurance companies and OLR, Mayor's Office of Labor Relations, and came up with this dollar figure with the insurance company. And then someone said, well, if the insurance company wants it that bad, I mean, couldn't it be worth more than that? And they said, well, that's the number that we were given. And then someone else was said, but even if it was worth more, should we do this if they offer us 100 million? Should we do this if they offer us 500 million? And remember, they committed to $1 billion in savings.
So Mary,
it's a lot.
Do we have any facts, knowledge about what the consequences would be if this doesn't mature? And for those who are just tuning in, earlier we did some role playing. It was entirely fictitious. I was representing a fictitious insurance company, and Ellen was representing a patient, as she is. Okay, so essentially she represented all of us. How do we peel this onion back? So, for example, I'll put a suggestion out there. I know over time you've invited many people to this conversation on Friday evenings. You've invited people to mayoral debates, and sometimes people choose to participate, and sometimes they choose not to. Is there an opportunity to invite the insurance company and MLC representatives to a Friday evening conversation, a fireplace conversation with all of us, where, similar to what Ellen and I did, you give them some time where people can provide an opening statement, and then create an opportunity for some dialogue where you or others are able to ask some very pointed questions, and then hopefully open it up maybe for questions from the much broader audience. But I'm thinking, how do we bring transparency to this?
Well, even in the method of trying to help you, I've been trying to get the insurance company to come and do a Q&A to answer all the millions of questions that we get on a constant basis from our members. We know that they go to unions. We know that they go down to Florida and go visit the retirees, but they have not been coming on this channel. And we've said to them, you could watch what we do. We're not looking to attack you. We have members who are in need of answers, and it would be direct for you to come here and do it. Come to our home like you go everywhere else. You go to 237. You go down to Florida. You go to all these other union meetings. You bring swag bags. You bring, late branded tchotchke shit. We're just asking you to spend an hour on a Zoom with us and answer our questions regarding our health.
They just won't do it. I mean, early on when they were trying to force us into an Aetna MA, I used to go to the Aetna dog and pony shows. And they had people from the carriers there. And then also there were some live things with also live streams with the carriers. And I frankly, I think they're just too afraid of litigation. I think that's why they do it. I think it's their corporation counsel at their various places, their in-house counsel, saying just don't do it, because they just don't want to talk about a lot of this stuff. And also over 4.5 years of Marianne doing this, she's educated all of us on the issues, and we're not like we were 4.5 years ago. We have more members, and we actually we're loaded for bear. We know the right questions to ask, and we know when they're giving us gobbledygook or giving us responses that aren't to the point. So I don't think that's going to work. All that I can say is that I think our best bet is to try to work on city council and the state to pass our legislation, and maybe we will eventually accomplish that. Otherwise, I think we've done all the right things. We're one of the biggest retiree organizations now, I think, outside of AARP, which a lot of people say really isn't a retiree organization, but is instead an insurance carrier pretending it's a retirees organization because they want to sell you lots of insurance. But I don't know what to tell you, Matt. I don't think that's going to work. But I do think that our grassroots thing of educating people with each one teach one, everyone has neighbors. Everyone has relatives. Everyone is people. They even meet in supermarket lines. And I've not been ashamed to talk to people in supermarket lines here in Carmel who are wearing a DEP hat or an NYPD hat or shirt. And I try to talk with them in a non-confrontational way and ask them if they're aware of some of these issues. And actually, as the years have gone by, some have said, oh, yeah, no, actually, I know. I've got like their website on my phone and everything. So we're doing the best we can. We're always going to be underfunded compared to these large carriers. But this is about all that we can do. And I know that other retiree groups around the country are paying attention to us. And some of them have actually litigated and won, like in, I think, Ithaca and Cortland and Delaware. So we're doing the best we can. But I agree it's not an ideal situation. But with everyone's
what we should do is find out a way for, there should be two things that they do. One, if they have a union welfare fund that has a drug plan, they should be contacting the union welfare fund about what we said, expressing their concern, your concern over their fiduciary responsibility and sharing their data. So I would start with that, because many of you guys can do that by email this weekend, because you can do an email right from your union's website to the welfare fund. The second thing is, Ellen, I have a question for you. You talk about the New York City's privacy officers. How would we get in touch with them from our respective agencies where we worked?
Well, every agency does have a privacy officer, actually, and it should be listed in the organizational chart. Usually they're part of the general counsel's office, although I could imagine there might be times when they were part of the another part of the agency. But most mayoral agencies should have them. And there are a few mayoral agencies that are not subject to the privacy laws, the city's requirements for data use agreements. But those are few and far between, and they tend to be things like the libraries or some of the culturals or other smaller entities that are kind of like quasi New York City. But you should be able to look in, if you're inactive, you should be able to look on the org chart and find your general counsel's office. And what you want to do is call them or email them and say, hey, I understand that most mayoral agencies have a privacy officer. Can you put me can you give me the contact information for them? And then you can contact them. And you can also provide that information then to your union's welfare fund, which would make it a lot easier for them to express their concerns about this. Again, I do think it's a pity, because about 7 or so, even more years ago, the city did establish this citywide position, the chief privacy officer, and established a chief information officer, and put in place a process to actually think about these times of data exchanges before they occurred, to avoid getting into trouble. And they cover everything like destruction of the data afterwards. It's not, you can't get rid of it until about a year afterwards, because you may have to respond to subpoenas and to legal documents related to lawsuits, but you have to actually sign a certificate of destruction that you've gotten rid of the data. And I'm not seeing any of this in any of the talk that has occurred about this new agreement for the insurance plan for the city and the sharing of drug data. And that really concerns me, because these are basic ideas that the city has introduced over the past 7 or more years. I think it dates back probably to 2017 or possibly 2016. So that is ridiculous. And that's why I suggested that if the chief privacy officer never had this brought to her attention by OLR, which is a city agency, and then if she knew about it and decided not to even think on it, despite it being something that the annual reviews of privacy procedures for the city say she should, and this should be done rarely, to me, that is a problem. Because again, ordinarily, when she or he reviews these proposed data use agreements or exchanges, it's memorialized in actually like a legal memorandum to the general counsel of the agency that is planning on being the lead agency for the data exchange, which in this case would be OLR.
And I'm just going to add it. When the chief privacy officer is involved and an information security officers involved. Those are not trivial undertakings. Okay, again, having walked in those shoes for many years, what I would suggest is that the administrative, physical, and technical reviews that go into performing a proactive risk assessment are take considerable knowledge, expertise, and time. And I'm curious as to whether or not the privacy officers, even within the unions and beyond the unions with the municipality, city of New York, I'm curious as to whether or not they've actively been involved in this process, or if it's really been treated as a process where the MLC says, okay, we're covered because we have a contract, a business associate agreement, and the business associate agreement brings us this umbrella of coverage, and consequently, we don't need to peel the onion back. So I think if there's any active members listening to this, great opportunity for you to take your local privacy officers and information security officers aside, help them understand these types of issues that we're looking at, ask them to please weigh in on it, and perhaps that they can get involved. Often when Marianne's asking for people either to go to Albany or she's asking people to go to a protest or engage in other activities, there are a lot of people who, for a variety of reasons, cannot do that type of activity. They live out of state, they have mobility issues, but those individuals are part of this grassroots effort. We're blessed by having such a wide array of knowledge and expertise and experience within the Organization for Public Service Retirees and some of the sister organizations. And what I would say is I know we've been going at this for four years, close to 5 years. It's exhausting. Marianne's given up her life, and other people likewise, like the moderators, have given up substantial time. We really need the members, when they see and hear about issues like this, we really need you to dig in. It's easy to research these things using the internet. And then once you've researched them, if you live in the city of New York, reach out to your elected officials, help educate them. It's often they're not even aware of an issue because they're dealing with so many different constituent issues. Something like this might even not be on their radar screen. So take the time to help become an advocate on behalf of all of us, our organization. So that's kind of my plug. I know Marianne does plugs for all sorts of other things. Marianne, thank you so much for having me on this evening again. Ellen, thank you. And for the record, what we did earlier was fictitious. It was role playing. There is no ABC insurance organization or the XYZ or whatever.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Mary.
I appreciate you guys. You guys can drop off if you'd like, and I'll chat with you later. I want to finish wrapping up our Friday Live and then answer a couple of these questions. So I appreciate your insight, and I'm hoping people actually listen. Not our people. I mean, we all listen. We know what the hell we're doing. It's just about getting everybody else to listen. So thank you for being part of the conversation. I appreciate you both. All right, bye. So a couple of questions. Let's go through some of these, and then I want to give you just a quick wrap-up update on some of this so we can close this part out. So Poland Spring, you keep asking about the bus leaving from Queens. We have not identified that we can have a bus leave from Queens yet. I don't have enough people for that second bus, which means the first bus leaves from Manhattan. So if I don't have enough people from Brooklyn, Queens, or from Queens, Long Island to make that second bus leave from Queens, no, that bus leaves from Manhattan. If I have a second bus, because right now I've just got one. And so it's a lot of commitment because remember, I've got to staff 2 buses. I have to do T-shirts. I've got to do signs. I've got to plan your lunch and dinner. So if you've got friends, now's the time to do it because we need to get this bill done. Thank you, Sandy. I definitely appreciate it. JG, President, FDNYRFA, will there be a bus from Pennsylvania? No, I don't have a way of doing a bus from PA unless you have a bus, unless you have 50 people that will come from Pennsylvania. You can feel free to let me know that and we'll try to work with you on getting a bus out of PA. But right now, buses leave from Lower Manhattan to Albany. Unless you want to meet us in Albany, you can do that as well. Okay, let me go up over here. Katie, if tomorrow I leave the DOE and sign up for NYPD, would that information on my medical pass be used when the NYPD does my background check? So, Katie, we are told that those documents, that information, that data that United Healthcare and Emblem would be getting would not be punitive by them. We're also told it won't be shared with the city, is also what we're told. So I think your answer to that is that won't apply, but I would rather see that in writing just for my own, my own desire, because I don't like taking things. Look, the Municipal Labor Committee has lost absolutely all credibility. They have absolutely no credibility. They have misrepresented things now going on for since 2014, right? I have no faith in anything they say. Anytime I see Alan Klinger's lips moving, to me, that doesn't give me comfort that he's telling me the truth. So it's a concern. And to know that 101 unions in the Municipal Labor Committee were once again, well, I guess -5, were misled in the data sharing component to this regarding those that didn't have a union drug plan, didn't know that their members, because they were supporting this plan, their data was automatically going to be shared. That should have been shared from the get-go, and it wasn't. Why? Because if the plan didn't go through, they were being jammed into 2 arbitrations where the city was potentially going to make them pay. And at least they knew that if the city gave the data of those people not in a union welfare fund, that was potentially 20% of the people, from what I understand, already having their data shared. That had to be some savings. Don't you think those union leaders should have known that before voting on the NYC EPPO plan? I do. And they were not afforded that, because when what we were told was in the room of the MLC meeting, the union leaders that have these small unions asked, where was this? How do you already have our members' data? And Alan Klinger said, that was in the contract. You agreed to that when you passed the NYC EPPO. And then they asked them later where that was, and supposedly he gave them the cited source and whatever of where that data was, but no one's been able to find where that is. So when they reached out to us for another copy of the contract to see if we had something different, I was like, no, we have the same thing you have. It's not redacted. What they gave us was more redacted than the original draft was, and they redacted stuff that was public before. We were like, you've got to be kidding. And then that's when it was revealed that it was almost 100 pages of redacted pages, not the 30 something that we originally saw. So they lied and lied and lied and lied. Or if you don't want to say the word lie, they misrepresented the truth. Does that sound more sexy? I don't know. But it was absolutely horrible what they did. This Municipal Labor Committee, there's no solidarity in there. And yes, yet still the union leaders are still there, where they're not calling out the leadership that literally took them for granted one more time. So that's my long answer, Katie. Does this apply equally to non-Medicare eligible retirees in the new PPO plan and Medicare eligible retirees on Medicare Plus Emblem? Okay, so this conversation we had tonight was all active workers and every pre-Medicare retiree. We have no knowledge that the city is already, if the city is already sharing. So if you are a city retiree on Medicare, you may want to contact OLR on Monday morning or fill up their email box all weekend and ask them, are you sharing our drug data with Emblem Health or the city, other insurance? Are you sharing our medical drug data, our drug data with the insurance company? That should be a question, or with anybody. Because the Medicare people, we're not even in this conversation, right? This whole discussion has been around the NYC EPPO, which is not for Medicare people. If you're on Medicare, this doesn't concern you. But you raise a very valid question, Marcia. If they made that plan, that arrangement in there, are they already doing it for the senior care people? I don't have the answer to that. And we also know that they're moving to rebid senior care. And we're told that who the hell knows what they're going to do? More copays, other restrictions, increased deductibles, who the hell knows what? So I can't answer that question either. But it's worth a question to OLR and asking, asking them. I did post here the Deputy Commissioner of Chief Privacy Officer, Michael Fitzpatrick. His number is 718-923-3806. And if you search him, email the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Privacy Officer, Michael Fitzpatrick, you will get the website. If you can't copy paste that link, you can literally email him directly through the website. Okay. So that might be a way for you guys to this weekend express your concern over this healthcare plan that the city is sharing your drug data for those of you that are impacted. Yeah, Sharon, and there was another Sheila. I have to call Sheila as well and Faye as well. Faye, if you're listening, I still did not get to you today. My day's just shot to hell. Carol Tortorici, you've been looking for Marianne Bento. I did not see Marianne on here. If you could go back to that post on our Facebook page, it should be open. If it's not, I will go back and open it. There's a thread on our Facebook page for you to connect with other Staten Islanders to talk about this trip. So I will go look for that afterwards. Please, Carol, go back to our Facebook page and look for that thread where I said, hey, anyone who wants to go from Staten Island, please connect with Marianne Bento. Go back there. If I find that thread quickly, I will just write your name in there to tag you, and I'll tag Marianne as well. Matthew, if they rebid senior care and additional drug data may give current insurance company an edge. Yes, I totally agree with you. Will the new supplemental I have no idea, Gerald. We're only being told about it now. Nothing's been in process, but guess who's going to be in the table of doing that? United Federation of Teachers, DC 37, the MLC. Did they invite us? No, not yet. But we're going to try to make that push that happens. Thank you for all that you do. 2 questions. Is the original court case with Judge Lyle Frank still active, or does it finalize after a certain time? We still have 2 open cases, and they're not going anywhere. Were you able to talk with Julie Menon about 1096? We have scheduled an appointment. I believe they were confirming the date today. Not sure if I should know this, but have you seen the contract? Yes, there is a contract, and our attorneys have it. Rebid senior care as to Gibbs. That's what we said. Well, we will see. If the mayor goes through with taking $225 million out of the retiree healthcare fund, will that mean that the unions will have their own drug plan for members? No, that has nothing to do with any of that. The Retiree Health Benefit Trust is a trust fund that was created under Bloomberg to pay for healthcare futures for retirees. It was that if there was ever a situation where they were having financial trouble, stress, the budget was tight because of whatever the economy, that they couldn't afford something or there was a gap, that would plug the gap. They're not making it a priority the way that they should. Healthcare is statutory. It must be provided. And they have to be reminded of that. I think that also falls under pre-Medicare retirees, which is more expensive. What they do forget is a Medicare retiree is the least cost to the city. Almost all of your hospitalization bill is covered by Medicare. There is no premium to Medicare. 80% of your healthcare bill is covered by Medicare Part B. They only provide the 20% coverage, less what you're paying, and mostly because they put those damn copays on us in 22 and then again in 25, you're paying most of that 20%. So that's not the case. So I don't know where they would think that they would. Only way that why they would rebid senior care is to either try to get the premium cost for the supplemental down or increase copays, increase deductibles, because look, there's no networks. There's no other way for them to try to pass more costs on to you other than do it in the supplement. So Medicare is your primary. They pay first, the secondary will pay. after you pay your $15 or whatever it is, plus your facility charge, plus your blood pay, whatever. You're literally paying more for your healthcare as a Medicare retiree today. So I don't know what they'll do, but we're obviously going to stay on it. We will be on first thing Monday morning. We'll reach out to OLR and ask for, sure, let me know what happens. And when when Mike and Judith and them open the page, just put it in the, tell us something thread and let us know what you find out. And then I'm sure tag me or Michael will let me know what goes on. So, all right. Let me just make sure there's nothing else here. Any insights into the governor's purported initiative to reduce? So every year, Matthew, the governor goes to put in Medicare B reimbursement to be rescinded, does it every single year, and it doesn't go anywhere. So I can't tell you, if they're looking for savings, I guess it's something that they're being pressured to do. But RPEA has come out against it. We supported them with that. I think it's the right thing to do. No one should take away benefits from a current retiree at all. And they're supporting what we're doing as well, because they know that our bill will help them too. It will help them not be forced into Medicare Advantage. It will prevent retirees' healthcare from being diminished. So those are the fights that we will continue. And at least we know we have really good partners in that fight as well. So, again, Dan, I did not meet with the speaker last week. We are finalizing that call. We were finalizing the appointment today with our team, and I've been on meetings all day. I don't know if that meeting was ever confirmed, but we were pinpointing a date, because I don't think you guys get what this looks like, right? Like this is my calendar. I mean, you probably can't see that with all the glare, but this is my calendar. Okay. Now this was last month. Okay. All those blocks, those are all appointments. It never ends. So when I say to you, I'm busy or I can't get back to you, that's why, because I'm in meeting after meeting after meeting. But if you see, I know you probably can't see the difference in colors. So there's all confirmed, and then some days we'll have like blocks out, like they're not shaded in, and those are tentative. So once they're confirmed, they go solid. And then I know I have the meeting. So once I know it's confirmed, I'll let you know we have a meeting with the speaker and it's confirmed. But don't let the noise that you're hearing on social media about the mayor wanting to take from the Retiree Health Benefit Trust and all of that yet get you. I keep calling this the annual budget kabuki dance. And that's exactly what it is. If you go back in history, every mayor, for the beginning of time, healthcare is skyrocketing. This is expensive. We can't afford this. They overinflate the deficit that they have. Like Mamdani inflated a $12 billion deficit. Everyone we called in budget said the deficit's not $12 billion. It's probably about 4 to 6, probably somewhere in the middle. Where did it come in? Somewhere in the middle. And they said he's got to make it seem like the sky is falling so he could get more money out of the governor, and then he could figure out where he needs to make his cuts. What else did they scream about? We got to cut labor. We need to lay off workers. We have to take retiree health care. We're going to dip into the rainy day fund and the Retiree Health Benefit Trust. We might even close firehouses and lay off a bunch of people. They say this every freaking year. Where the hell have you guys been? So don't let that get to you. This is just freaking hype. They want you pissed off so you start bitching at the governor and then tell her she's got to give more money, and she's in an election year. Did I just like lay out the book that has been utilized, the playbook for like the last 50 years? Yes. So now the mayor's got to go, and he just put out his draft of the bill. Now it goes to city council. City council. You saw what they did to Eric last year. Go back and look at the budget hearings from January to March. They were all like yelling at each other. Cut this, don't cut this. We're not cutting that. Today, the speaker's going around to every news media that'll listen to her. We're not making cuts. We're looking at trying to pull back on waste, fraud, and abuse. She almost sounded like Elon for a moment. So waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're not cutting services. And they don't want to, the council doesn't want to raise taxes. You raise property taxes on a retiree homeowner whose house is paid for, you're going to have a problem. They can't afford 9.5%. You didn't give us a 9.5% COLA. The cost of living we got this year was 1.2%. on the first $18,000 of your pension. And that's if you make an $18,000 pension. And if you do, what did you get? $216 divided by 12 is $18 a month. What the hell does $18 a month give you? So they give you $18 a month, then they jack up your copays. Now you're paying $300 a month in freaking copays. Well, what the hell did the $18 do? You're still behind the 8 ball. Social Security gave you a cost of living adjustment. They took it back out with the Medicare B premium. Then your drug plan went up. The city of New York charged you one from $150 to $180 a month. Where the hell do they want you? They think you like shit gold bricks or something? No. And the city has to understand they cannot take money from retirees who don't have the ability to pay. All they're going to do is force you into an affordability crisis even more. The same population, the same issue they say they want to fix. So where's that going to come from? Nowhere. You don't have the ability to go out and work unless you want to go be a greeter at Walmart and go say, well, this is what I'll do for the next 10 days and maybe I'll make $50 today and I can go home and I can pay that freaking copay that this Mayor Adams put on us and the unions are using to fund their next raise. So we have to come up with our strategy and how we're going to work on this and get our messaging out there that why they can't do this to you, because we know right now the copays that we're paying is funding the MLC. That's why they did it. They had another funding agreement that they had to make. They're trying to pull money from everybody. That's why they're also charging more copays to all the active workers. This is nothing new. You've seen the sheets that I've posted where they say if we raise hospitalization from 50 to 150 or 50 to 300, we're going to be able to collect this much money. They know how many times you go to the ER every year. They know what they could bring in. So that's what's crazy. UFT only 106 for. So Poland Spring, here's the deal on that. The UFT is keeping you connected to the UFT by giving you $106 back, which still empowers them to screw you even more. See the cycle? They're going to charge you more. Then they're going to give you a little bit more money in your refund so that you keep paying your retiree chapter dues to them. And then you buy the ship plan and then they're going to raise copays again. And then you're still paying your retiree chapter dues and you're buying the ship. And then they're going to raise it another $15 or some shit. And then you're still going to stay there. It's an abusive cycle. And this is what people, you guys call me all the time and say, why am I paying a retiree chapter dues if they're screwing me? I don't know. I ask you the same question. Is your $106 really worth it? You have to make that determination. I can't. But your retired chapter is supposed to be pushing back on the leadership of your local. And if they're not doing that, you have to have a come to Jesus moment with them. Oh, now you got me all riled up. We get Medicare B reimbursement minus copays equals what you really get. Yeah, well, and your Medicare B reimbursement doesn't come from the union. It comes from the city because that's part of the law. The copays were charged to you because the city and the MLC allowed it to happen. Wasn't done. There wasn't copays on Medicare retirees for 60 years. All right, now I need a drink. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Also, don't forget, if you haven't pulled together your 2022 copays, please do it this week. Get all those receipts together. Put them in an envelope. We're kind of moving closer a little bit. Oh, Marianne, I was replying to Long Beach. Oh, okay. It's hard because on the side, you don't see what's going on the side of my screen. On the side of my screen, I have all these comments flying by, and I don't know which ones are for me and which ones are for someone else. So start putting whoever you're replying to there so I know you're not talking to me. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. I gave you the contact information for the chief privacy officer. Email them. For those of you on the city drug plan or MBF, please email OLR and ask them. And if you want to call them on Monday and see what answers that you get, and of course report it back on our Facebook page. You guys have a great weekend. That's pretty much all. And if you haven't signed up for the bus trip, I got one more bus to fill. Please sign up for the bus trip. We will have a really great day, press conference, day of lobby, lunch and dinner, and you get to spend it all together. Enjoy your day, guys. I love you. Have a great weekend. Ciao.
Don't speak what you don't understand. The truth is not in your command. Don't shout about what you think is fake. The decision isn't yours to make. Don't lie about the way things are. Tall tales will take you very far. Don't scoff when they say it's the end. In this life we know you can't pretend. The days pass by, baby, set in stone. But it's not too late now for you to change your tone. Don't speak, don't speak. Open your soul. Don't